Hey, Shabbat shalom to everybody. Welcome back to Life of Worship Ministries here in Amarillo, Texas. And it is really good to be with you again on the Shabbat. I did. And so it is we're trying something new today, but it's only for today. We're at our house today. We did not go to the hotel just for circumstances and needing a number of different reasons. But Pastor Sandi is recovering. Just want to give you all a heads up that she's doing so much better. And uh, it's been a battle, 2 weeks of this thing. And I will just tell you, thank you so much for your prayers because I've never seen her get this sick before. And so she is doing so much better, and certainly appreciate that. Not 100%, but we're good. But we're good. And so we got a good Torah portion for you all today. And I see Rick jumping in there in the chat room. Good morning or good afternoon, and whatever time zone you're in. And Shabbat Shalom. He's got a little thing, Amarillo by morning. So, yep. You can't. Yeah, everybody knows Amarillo because of that song. Isn't that right? I think that's right. It's true. But we're going to have to jump into this thing like right away. Hey, this week's Torah portion is Vayetze, and which means and he went forth. So if you guys have your Bible, we're going to jump into this thing. And so we are over in Genesis, chapter 28, verse 10. Chapter 28, verse 10. And then this is a kind of a long Torah portion because it runs through chapter 31. So everybody go there. Have you read it yet? Have you read through the Torah portion so you know where I'm at? Because we're not going to read through the whole thing today. Just saying. But there's a lot packed into this Torah portion because it's so big, it's so long, because there's so many things to discuss. But we're gonna maybe fine tune some things and drill down. And I miss having our it's our mishpachah. It's everybody online. You're going to have to give me comments and throw some things in there, so I don't want to miss anything. And because I don't have a live audience in front of me, it's just me. So if you have any comments, we go through this thing. I want to hear it. I definitely want to hear it, or see it. At least see it in the chat. Chapter 28, and it begins at verse 10, and where Jacob, of course, he left. He left his home, and he's on his way to find a bride. And so he's been chased down and by Esau's older son. And what we have here is at the Hamakom, at a certain place, he spends the night. And this is where we get the Jacob's ladder type of thing. We see the angels ascending, descending. This is when we get the prophetic word that really launches Jacob on his journey. And then it goes forth. He meets Rachel, he meets Leah, he meets Lavan, and we see Lavan, who is betrays him, just doing all sorts of treachery and along the way. But in the meantime, he gets a bunch of sons, 11 of them, 11 sons are in this Torah portion, and he makes his exodus from the exile and to go back to the land. So that's kind of it in a nutshell before he meets Esau. That's next week. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We're going to start in Genesis chapter 28, verse 10. And Sandi, would you like to read that?
Yaakov went out from Beersheba and traveled toward Haran. He came to a certain place and stayed the night there because the sun had set. He took a stone from the place, put it under his head, and lay down there to sleep. He dreamt that there before him was a ladder resting on the ground with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of Yehovah were going up and down on it. Then suddenly Yehovah was standing there next to him, and he said, I am Yehovah, the Elohim of Abram, your grandfather, the God of Yitzhak. The land on which you are lying I will give to you and to your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the grains of the dust of the earth. You will expand to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. By you and your descendants, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Look, I am with you. I will guard you wherever you go, and I will bring you back into this land, because I won't leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Yaakov awoke from his sleep and said, Truly Yehovah is in this place, and I didn't know it. Then he became afraid and said, "This place is fearsome. This has to be the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." Yaakov got up early in the morning, took the stone he had put under his head, set it up as a standing stone, poured olive oil on its top, and named the place Beit El, house of God, house of Elohim. But the town had originally been called Luz. Yaakov took this vow: if God will be with me and will guard me on this road that I am traveling, giving me bread to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return to my father's house in peace, then Yehovah will be my God, and the stone which I have set up as a standing stone will be God's house. And of everything you give me, I will faithfully return to you 1/10. Did you want me to continue?
Yes, I want you to go through chapter 29, if you would.
Continuing his journey, Yaakov came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in a field, and there were 3 flocks of sheep lying there next to it, because they watered the sheep from that well. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and only when all the flocks had gathered there would be there they would roll the stone away from the opening of the well and water the sheep. Then they would put the stone back in its place on the well's opening. Yaakov said to them, "My brothers, where are you from?" They answered, "We're from Haran." He asked them, "Do you know Laban, the grandson of Nahor?" They said, "We do." He asked them, "Are things going well with him?" "Yes," they answered, "and here comes his daughter Rachel, with the sheep." He said, "Look, there's still plenty of daylight left, and it isn't time to bring the animals home. So water the sheep, then go and put them out to pasture." They answered, we can't, not until all the flocks have been gathered together and they roll the stone away from the opening of the well. That's when we water the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel, came with her father's sheep because she took care of them. When Yaakov saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Yaakov went up and rolled the stone away from the opening of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Yaakov kissed Rachel and wept aloud. Yaakov told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rivka's son, and she ran and told her father. When Laban heard the news of Yaakov, his sister's son, he ran to meet him, hugged him, and kissed him, and brought him into the house. Yaakov told Laban all that had happened. Laban said to him, "You are indeed my own flesh and blood." After Yaakov had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Why should you work for me for nothing, just because you are my relative? Tell me how much I should pay you." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was good looking with beautiful features. Yaakov had fallen in love with Rachel and said, "I will work for you 7 years in exchange for Rachel, your younger daughter." Laban answered, "Better that I give her to you than to someone else. Stay with me." So Yaakov worked 7 years for Rachel, and it seemed only a few days to him because he was so much in love with her. Yaakov said to Laban, "Give me my wife, since my time is finished, so that I can start living with her." Laban gathered all the men in the place and gave a banquet. In the evening, he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Yaakov, and he went in and slept with her. Laban also gave his slave girl Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her slave girl. In the morning, Yaakov saw that he was with Leah and said to Laban, "What kind of thing is this that you have done to me? Didn't I work for you for Rachel? Why have you deceived me?" Laban answered, "In our place, that isn't how it's done, to give the younger daughter before the firstborn. Finish the marriage week of this one, and I will give you the other one as is it also in exchange for the work you will do for me during the next 7 years." Yaakov agreed to this, so he finished her week, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. Laban also gave to his daughter Rachel his slave girl Bilhah. And so not only did Yaakov go in and sleep with Rachel, but he also loved Rachel more than Leah. Then he served Laban another 7 years. Yehovah saw that Leah was unloved, so he made her fertile while Rachel remained childless. Leah conceived and gave birth to a son, whom she named Reuben. "See, a son," for she said, "It is because Yehovah has seen how humiliated I've been, but now my husband will love me." She conceived again and gave birth to a son and said, "It is because Yehovah has heard that I am unloved, therefore he has given me this son also." So she named him Shimon, hearing. Once more she conceived and had a son, and she said, "Now this time my husband will be joined to me, because I've borne him 3 sons." Therefore she named him Levi, joining. She conceived yet again, had a son, and said, "This time I will praise Jehovah." Therefore she named him Yehuda, praise. Then she stopped having children.
Very good. Thank you, Sandy. And Let's pray. We didn't start out that way. So let's pray now. Father, we just thank you for this Torah portion. We thank you for the things that you're going to uncover and reveal, and just to give a better insight in terms of the scriptures, but also not just to have insight in the scriptures, not just to have head knowledge, but to understand this relationship that we have with you, this relationship that you will lay down everything to fetch us as a bride that's out in exile. And that, Father, that we thank you that you have laid these things before us. Give us eyes to see, ears to hear that which your Ruach is speaking to us about today. Those things that go deep within us, that change us from the inside out. So that which is revealed is not just for knowledge, but it is transformation, so that we can also be that beautiful bride that you've set apart for us in the name of Yeshua. Amen. All right. And I want to give a shout out also to, I see Eddie and Tammy joining us there, and Linda also in the chat. So it's good to see you guys. And yeah, so we have this journey that begins, and where Jacob is sent out, and he's sent out to fetch a bride. And we've talked about that many times in the past, about where he started, where he's come, where he was going. And we can see a lot of the parallels in this Torah portion, where we see that from Jacob's father's house, he sent forth to fetch a bride. And of course, we can pull in together the connection of Yeshua, who sent forth from his father's house to get his bride who is in exile. And that's, I would think, where you can say that's where we are. We are the bride waiting in exile, waiting for the revealing of our bridegroom. And so we see a lot of those parallels that are going on here. We've dug into it in the past about Jacob, and where he went to that certain place, the Hammakom, which is 28:11, where he spent the night. It's when he has been robbed of everything that he's had, so he goes empty-handed. And we can think about Yeshua, who left all of everything that he possibly could have in heaven, and he left it to go to find his bride. And so we see that connection as well. Jacob being a type and shadow of Messiah, who left everything in order to find his bride who is in exile. And then we also see how in this process that we see who the bride is. It's not only that he marries Rachel, his the desire of his heart. He also marries Leah. And as a side note, where those two daughters were to be married to the firstborn and the secondborn of Isaac, and yet Esau, because of his own fleshly desires, married Canaanite women. and and so now there was a bride that didn't have a husband, a bridegroom. So it ends up being that we have almost like this tale of two brides that's going on in this, where did the Messiah come for two brides? No, we wouldn't say that, but that's an interesting parallel between uh, Leah and Rachel. And in those parallels, but we also see that it is both Leah and Rachel and their maids that provide, and
The bride and the concubine.
the bride and the concubine, you can say that. But who do they bring forth the children who make up the tribes of Israel. And so what we we can also see there in chapter 28 verse 11 is that where where Jacob laid down and he put a stone under his head. The heads is also representation of tribes. And so a lot of parallels. We've talked about that in the past, in past Torah portions, but now we start to see certain things be able to be synchronized together in this. Now, the next thing is he was sent forth from his father's house, but he only went based on the word of his father. Now, that's a strong word, that he would go forth and find himself a bride. I think that's very important for us to look at that. But it is now, after everything's been stripped off of him. You say, how do you know everything's been stripped off him? Because he wouldn't have left his father's house. His father is very rich, who would have sent with him a huge dowry in order to give to the family when he takes his bride. And we look in the extra biblical books, in the book of Jasher, where it was the firstborn of Esau that came and stripped him of that dowry, stole it from him. And the only thing he had left was his staff, according to the scriptures, is that what was left, or I guess he had a flask of oil, which he was able to pour out on the stone where after he gets up the next morning. But nevertheless, now that he has nothing, now that there's nothing to take with him, he does make this plea. Yahweh would be with him and keep him during the journey and give him food and garments to wear, and that he would return to his father's house safely. So isn't it interesting that it starts out with a prophetic word, which basically, I'm going to repeat it again, because this is important in terms of this whole Torah portion, is that Yahweh gives him this word: your descendants shall also be like the dust of the earth. So here it is, repeating the word that was given to Abraham, that was given to Isaac. And now your descendants are going to be like the dust of the earth, spread out to the west and to the east, and to the north and to the south. And in you and in your descendants shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you. So really what Jacob's doing there at the end of this chapter 28, he's repeating the fact that, okay, if you're going to be with me, then you're going to be with me, basically is what he's saying. And behold, I'm with you, and I'll keep you wherever you go and bring you back to this land. I will never leave you until I have done what I promised you. And that's so Jacob's journey, although it's already started, it really doesn't start until he's at the place, at the Hamakom. It's not until he comes into this sacred place, this place where we see the Melachim, the angels of Yahweh are ascending and descending at this place. So it's a tremendous, shall we say, an open heaven right here. There's an experience that causes Jacob, I guess, to step back and say, whoa, there's something more to this journey than I even realized. I thought I was going to get a bride, but this is something that's bigger than me. That is the nature of prophecy. That is the nature of this prophetic word that's been given to him, this download that really, shall I say, will sustain him for the next 20 years. Because one word from Yahweh will change a life forever. And I think most of us will simply will are in that same boat. When we heard Yahweh call our name, when we surrendered to his voice and we came to Yeshua, isn't that what happened to us? Is that particular word shifted our life forever and made such a change that we have continued to pursue, and we will continue to pursue him because of that one word. So this is very significant, because it's by the prophetic word that we are able to journey through this life. It's only by that prophetic word that we are able to make a distinction of two different paths that we can take. One path that follows him and a path that doesn't follow him. And we see that along the way that there are anti-messiahs that will do everything that they possibly can to disrupt us on our journey. In fact, if you think about Jacob, what was it when he took off? He had a disruption, if you look at Jasher, that could have disrupted his journey altogether. He could have said, look, I have been stripped of everything. How can I even show up and go get a bride? That could have derailed him, because the enemy will throw people at us. He'll throw circumstances at us to do everything that he can to derail us from what our purpose is, to fulfill the purposes for which Yah has called us. And yet Jacob remained true to this journey because he was sent, and he was not going to come up empty-handed, shall we say. He's not going to be the one that says, oh, I've had this really bad thing happen in my life, and therefore I'm not worthy, or I don't have the energy or the power or the anointing, or you throw in whatever excuse in order to fulfill Yah's purposes for me, because he set his heart as flint, shall we say. That he set his face in the direction that he needed to go. We see that even comes out later on in the Torah portion when it's time for him to leave, is that he sets his face. Um, and I think that's really an important phrase when we get to it uh, later on. I think it's in chapter 31 that he sets his face what? To return where he's supposed to go. Because why the prophetic word is that he would go, but he would return. And and we also have a battle that we see that happens in this during this journey. Lavan, treacherous. I mean, the uh, this whole relationship with his uncle, it's built upon, I mean, maybe it's threats, uh, maybe it's fear, maybe it's but we see within Jacob as he deals with his uncle this deep character strength that he has, and that is that he'll work for his daughter for 7 years, and then after Lavan betrays him and gives him his older daughter, saying, "Well, look, I got to marry off my older daughter first. That's our tradition around here. We got to do that." Uh, he still is a man of honor, said, okay, I'll work another 7 years in order to for Rachel. Uh, in fact, he stays on even longer than that, another 6 years after that, in order to build up his wealth. So isn't it interesting that he will say, look, I came empty handed. You did bring me in. I will work for you. And because as a result of that, Jacob made Laban a very wealthy man. Now, there's some twists and turns in it because Lavan is not a man of Yah. He is uh, two-faced. His name means white or whitewash, but it also means um, uh, to make bricks. To make bricks. Now, of course, when you think about to make bricks, what does that remind us of? Does that remind us of Pharaoh, who put the charge upon the 12 tribes of Israel that they were enslaved and they had to make bricks for all of the building projects that Pharaoh had, and then made it even worse. So as time passed, as Moses returned, not only they're making bricks, but then they had to gather their own supplies in order to make bricks, and then they took away, yeah, everything possible to make those bricks good. So they had to gather even those extra supplies. I mean, this is this is a Pharaoh type, or shall we say, another type and shadow of the anti-Messiah, that which would try to break Jacob, Yaakov, in this journey, to break him down, to get him to the very point of saying, look, all I'm going to do is exist in life. I'm going to work this thing out day after day after day, like well, shall we say, like the rut that we feel like life gives us. We get up in the morning, we go to work, we work hard out throughout the day, only to go to bed, to get up the next morning to do the same thing again. This is this is the this is what the taskmaster does. This is what slavery does to us. And this is where Jacob, in his character, always is recognizing that he was sent forth with a prophetic word, and that prophetic word would be fulfilled when he returns to the land. And even though it's, I mean, 20 years of his life. I mean, think about 20 years ago. Where were you 20 years ago? What were your dreams and your ambitions in life? What type of twists and turns that when you felt like you had a certain purpose by which you were going to conquer the world? I mean, 20 years ago. I mean, I'm thinking about, well, it was more than 20 years ago when I graduated from high school, but it was, oh, now is my time. Now I'm going to make a way for myself. Now I'm going to set my hand to the things before me. And my desire was to have a better outcome in life, even above and beyond what my parents had. And yet, life is very challenging. We battle with the things of not only circumstances, but but our circumstances are highly affected by what government policy is. Our lives are greatly influenced by our friends and by our families, by our faith, by the things that uh, by what maybe many of us started on this journey. We were unbelievers. when we were set out on our own. We went out to find a bride, to build a family. And yet, in this course of life, there have been a lot of different opportunities for us to be disappointed. And yet, there's something within us that says, no, I will prevail. I will prevail. I'll meet these challenges. I will overcome. How many times, though, have we sat and we looked at the challenges of life and we sat back and we looked at it and said, wait a minute, I'm done. I give up. I can't do it anymore. I mean, have you ever felt that way? As after a particularly not just a hard day or a hard week, but maybe a hard year, or maybe a period of struggles over a period of years, and it's like, "Ugh, I'm done. Why do I even keep the faith? Why do I even walk this thing out? Why don't I just be like everybody else who seems to be happy going around through life?" I mean, what do you think Jacob thought sometimes? Yeah, he didn't have a lot of distractions like we have. Well, when we get into a certain mode and effect, what can we do? Well, we can turn on the TV, we can turn on music, we can turn on a distraction, we can get get drunk, we can do drugs, we can do whatever we want to do to distract us from the harshness of life. Isn't that uh, what our society will offer us in order to allow us to escape our taskmasters, the enslavement that we find ourselves in, and so Jacob is on this mission, and yet there's something deep within Jacob. Maybe it's because he studied in the tent of Abraham. He studied in the tents of Shem. He studied Torah. He studied Hebrew. He understood this. He understood his genealogy. He understood his history. He understood uh, what happened in the flood. What were the different things? And now he is carrying this burden. He's carrying this history of life. And now, because his brother Esau is just a rascal, I don't know. That's probably not even a good enough word for or bad enough word for Esau. He's having to even flee from the land in order to get away from his brother. But in order to find a bride, I mean, he's got this. I mean, is Esau going to chase after him further? I mean, what else could he be thinking about? And so this cry and this plea of uh, to Yahweh saying, if you'll be with me, like you just said, basically over in verse 20, and you keep me on this journey that I take, and you'll give me food to eat, garments to wear, then he will return in safety. So he sets up a memorial. He sets up that pillar before he goes, and he declares something that's very prophetic in a place which we would say is where the foundation of the temple would be built. And so, and not only that, he also says, I'm going to take and I'll give a tenth of all that you prosper me with. So he goes above and beyond and says, look, because that which you give me, part of that portion, part of that belongs to you as well, Father. So this is kind of all of the setup, and now we're in chapter 29, and there were some certain things that just kind of jumped out at me as I was studying this Torah portion, and I wanted to bring it to your attention, and maybe you can help me dig this out a little bit more. It starts out in verse 29, chapter 29, verse 1. Then Yaakov, Jacob, went on his journey and came to the land of the sons of the east. So what caught me was this word for journey, and so that's where I wanted to look at that a little bit more closely. What is this word journey? And I thought it's very interesting. It's made up of two different words, and the word is, as my computer will, it's nasa. Nasa is one part of it, and the other word is regel. Regel is the Hebrew word for a foot, as a foot that's used in walking, and it's a euphemism. in the sense of being able to endure, to it, one step at a time. So the other part is nasa, meaning to lift up, and that gives us an idea of not only just the lift, so like lifting the foot, so that's where we get the word journey from, but so the lifting of the foot in order to advance, in order for us to move forward. Uh, but it also carries with it and something else that's also very, very interesting. That Nasa is translated in a bunch of different ways within the scripture. It is a word that's been used which means uh, to to carry away, like, or to carry a burden. It speaks about um, to the ability to advance and to arise and to go forward. It also is translated one time Mary. Isn't that interesting? That that he's on this journey to find a bride to marry, and so it starts to we peel back the layers and we start to see some things that are a lot deeper. It also not only means it has this idea of advancing forward as if carrying forth a purpose to fulfill, but it is also the gives an image of armor bearer, armor bearer. So Jacob went on this journey. Jacob is carrying a burden that's going to bring forth a seed line. It's going to bring forth a marriage, but it is also not just the fact that he's going empty handed, but he's also armed. Well, he's been stripped of everything except for his staff. So, what is this idea maybe that's implicated in the word is that as an armor bearer, or that he is uh, going forth as perhaps a soldier, one that is carrying um, the weapons of warfare. In other words, that in his journey, that he is going to be battling something more than just flesh and blood. That it's going to be there's a spiritual dimension of a spiritual war that he is embarking upon. What we've seen in the natural with Esau and Esau's oldest son is that, yeah, there was a physical war of the flesh that went on, and now he's been stripped of everything stolen from him, and yet he has embarked upon a journey that is also uh, to go forth and to conquer. He is, and he will be battled against along the way. Now, one of the things that when I was looking at that the rabbis like to say is that when he lifted up his foot on, or he's going forth on this journey, and he comes into the land of the sons of the east, is well, that sons of the east would also give us an idea that he's going into a place of well, away from Torah, when that euphemism, metaphorically speaking, going to the east is going away from Torah. It's not that he's going away from Torah, but he's having going to go into a place that is Torah less, is without the instructions of Yahweh. And one of the things that we also know is that Lavan is definitely pagan. He uh, has embraced the god of Mesopotamia, the gods of Babylon, the gods of Nimrod, shall we say, taking on their traditions. Why do we say that? Well, one of the things is when they leave, Rachel does something. Rachel uh, takes the the gods of her father, the little shrunken heads by which Lavan would use for divination, uh, took them all. So why? Well, maybe so Lavan wouldn't be able to find them through divination. Maybe, maybe for her own purposes. We don't know. That part's kind of silent. Why would she take them? Other than that, we have some other hints when Jacob sits down with Leah and with Rachel and say, "Hey, it's time for us to go." Yahweh spoke to us, and they said, "Well, look what our father's done." well, we need to get out of here. They were in agreement with Jacob. They're like, we got to get away from Laban. He's not a good guy. And so when they pack up to leave, and Rachel takes the these the gods of Laban, could it be just simply not because she wanted to use them for her own purposes, but to hinder his ability to attack them, not only to follow or track them, but to take away his ability to use the occult arts against them on their journey? So there's some different thoughts about that. There's also something that's very interesting, is that when we look at Genesis chapter 30, where in verse 27 that Jacob is telling Laban, let's start in verse 25. Now it came about when Rachel had born Joseph, that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own place, to my own country, and give me my wives, my children, for I have served you, and let me depart. For you yourselves know my service, which I have rendered you." But Laban said to him, "If now it pleases you to stay with me, I have divined that Yahweh has blessed me on your account." Now, that's actually the proper translation in that verse. Now, some of you guys are reading from different translations. Let me see what another translation says in chapter 30, verse 27, which says, "And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that Yahweh has blessed me for thy sake." Well, wait a minute. That seems to say something a little bit different. Isn't it interesting that he would say, I mean, it'd be translated experience, and yet this other version says divine. The actual word nakash in the Hebrew language means to practice. Nakash means to practice divination. Divine, observe signs, learn by experience, diligently observe, practice, fortune telling, take as an omen. But the main strength of this word has to do with the practice of divination. And so Laban is basically saying, look, I have been practicing divination. I have been observing the signs and the omens. Um, and he tries to attribute it to Yahweh, because he said that Yahweh has blessed me on your account, that because of what I have seen through the dark arts, that Yahweh has blessed me. I've been able to perceive beyond my experience. In other words, he's looked into the spiritual realm using these dark arts in order to understand why he's been blessed. And then he attributes it to Yahweh. In other words, a lot of mixture going on here, of course. And uh, but Nakash speaks about um, it comes from a root that means to hiss, that is to hiss or to whisper a magic spell, generally to prognosticate, like a divine enchanter. What's been speaking to him? Well, the altar of Lavan, and I think it was in Jasher when it talks about this. This talks about, and I've taught on this before. It's been a little bit of time, but it's his altar was made up of these skulls, the skulls that are usually taken uh, from his captives, from his enemies, and then they've been processed in a way that they've been, and then set up. Why would one take the heads of one's enemies? Because it's the same thing that the Muslims do today, is that when they rip out a beating heart of their enemy and eat it in front of his uh, companions, is to declare, I have the authority and I'm taking the power of the enemy from them. This is uh, it's the same type of thing when we see in uh, where those that are practicing the occult, and they have human sacrifices, and they pull out the draw the blood from their victim and drink it. It's the same thing as saying, I'm taking the very essence and the power and all of the spiritual strength within this person and taking it into myself. Or when they do it to babies, they're taking the very strength and the innocence out of that baby, showing in order to appease the gods that they are sacrificing this infant to. I mean, it's very gross, it's very grotesque, but this is ultimately the dark arts. These are the things that the fallen ones, the watchers, taught the women that their cohorts on Earth, that produced the giants. This is the same type of thing. They learned the dark magic arts, and it's continued to be passed on to the generation. This is what Abraham left. It's like I don't. He was called out of darkness and into Yahweh's glorious light. This is the journey, and yet here Jacob has to go back to his family. Isaac was not allowed to leave the land. One, why? Because he was holy, and because he was holy, and he had been set apart because of he was born in the land and set apart, and even offered up as a sacrifice, yet not killed. Uh, uh, is that he was holy, could not leave the land, and so Abraham's servant went and brought him back Rebecca, his bride. And yet Jacob has to leave the land, and it does tell us something about this, how Yeshua had to leave his heavenly home in order to come into a land, into a world of darkness, a world that was surrendered all the way back into the garden to Hasatan. Uh, and and here Jacob is having to go on this journey that's revealing Yeshua the Messiah to us, going into this place of darkness, a place where Lavan is practicing divination, where Lavan doesn't respect the Elohim of Abraham and Isaac, and is disconnected, and yet somehow gives these little acclamades on the side, calling, however, it says that Yahweh has blessed me on your account. So we see that Jacob is having to live for 20 years in a dark place. So I think all of us can really relate to that, because do we not live in a dark world? Don't we live in where many places where we see these little, we come to Shabbat, it's our little refuge of light, this place of protection, this the secret place of the Most High. And we know that outside of the secret place of the Most High is a world that we want to be delivered from. And what Muslims do that. Rick, I want to just, if you go back and you look in recent history about what ISIS was doing to their uh, to those that they took captive recently, even in Syria, is where they would behead their captives, and they would rip out the hearts. That was in it's probably within the last 10 years. It made the headlines. Didn't stay in the headlines very long, but it was actually did that in Syria. ISIS where it was doing that, of whom the leader of Al Qaeda is now the president of Syria. No figure. It's allowed into the White House. I have feelings about that, but nevertheless, shall we move on? So this this idea, and you think about, well, Jacob left, literally fleeing Esau, having, and then losing everything, having to take a journey that who knows how long it took him to get from the land all the way back. I mean, I think it was how many, 600 miles, I think is what we had discussed before, about 600 miles. So it's a little bit of a journey by foot, and not really knowing what he's going, getting, where he's going. who he's going to meet along the way, and then what's going to happen when he gets to the other side, and how long is he going to be there, and when will he return? Because he's, but Yahweh guides his path all along this journey as he lifts up his foot as Nasa. I think this is important that we continue to go back to this terminology, Nasa, as he's going in order to fulfill his purposes. He's got to battle, um, not just flesh. He's got to battle his flesh in order to keep on going. Like we've got to battle our flesh. Don't we have to battle our flesh? Don't we have to encourage ourselves? This is why we gather on Shabbat, to be encouraged. We have to strengthen ourselves from within in order for us to uh, move forward. Like what this whole idea of Nassau talks to us about, to advance advance the purposes of Yahweh, because to fulfill the purposes of Yahweh, we have to advance those purposes. If we're going to advance them within our own lives, we have to lift up our foot. We have to go forward. We have to recognize that we must participate in the journey, and not only recalling the word that sent us forth, that prophetic word, but don't we also need that daily word to strengthen us, that daily word to send us forward to where we need to go? And so to do what we need to do. Now, the rabbis, the sages like to say, is where I read from one commentary, is that Jacob, when talking about the idea of lifting up his foot, the idea of the journey was that it was a joyful journey. He went forth in joy. I thought that was interesting that they would draw that uh, from that idea, to lift up with joy. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, this was from John Gill, and he was quoting, and he's saying after the vow at Bethel, and having had some intention or intimation that what he desired would be granted him, or he lift up his feet, which not only shows that he walked afoot, but that he went on his journey with great cheerfulness, for having such gracious promises made to him that God would be with him and keep him and supply him with all the necessaries, and return him again to the land of Canaan, which made his heart glad. His heart, as the Jewish writers say, lift up his legs, and he walked apace with great alacrity. So that's what one commentary said on this. And maybe so. Maybe it would be true that he can make this journey knowing that this promise had been made. It shifted his whole mindset. I mean, one of the things that we, when Life of Worship, before Life of Worship even began, we gathered here in this living room, and we would just meet uh, once a week, and we just prayed. It was a prayer meeting. It was a we didn't just go and say, okay, pray for Mary, pray for Sue, pray for, we're like, Father, we want your purposes fulfilled. We want to know your purposes, and we want to see them. We want you to speak to us. We want to be involved in what you're doing in here in Amarillo, Texas, and beyond. We want to see uh, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It was our desire to see that he come in power and in strength, and perhaps, you know, I would have to say that journey with not having anything. What did Jacob eat? What did he have to barter with? And yet it was. So could we say it was almost like a supernatural journey that he took? And it says, and he looked, Ra'ah, verse 2, chapter 29, he looked and behold. So he looked and behold. It's almost like those are two different versions of the same word. He looked, Ra'ah, and behold, Hine, a well in the field. And what did he see? He saw 3 flocks of sheep flying by it. 3. Okay. Now, whenever we think about 3, we also think about a lot of different things about 3. We had 3 witnesses appear to Abraham. We had 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. We have uh, 3 days journey that Abraham and Isaac took in order to get to the place, to Hamakom, to the place that the Abraham built an altar, and the ram was found in the thicket, in the thorns. We see. We see that imagery that's going on, that there's something more that is appearing to Jacob as he arrives at the well. And of all different things, I thought it just struck me that the well is covered by a stone that that would seem that it takes more than one person to remove the stone from the well in order to to water the flocks. It's implicated in the word in verse 3. When all the flocks were gathered there, they would then roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep and put the stone back in place on the mouth of the well. In other words, all the shepherds would all gather together at the same time, to water their flocks together before they took them back out to pasture. And so here it seems like there's 3 flocks, maybe 3 shepherds. It wasn't enough to move the stone, but they all gathered together and waited for all the shepherds to gather in order to water the flocks. And so there would be this gathering that would take place at where? At the well. But a stone that was very heavy that would seem to take more than one person to move. I mean, that's my idea when I'm reading this, just from the surface of the word, just kind of like, well, that's interesting that they because it was a very heavy stone. Well, of course, when I think about that, it's like, what other type could could we look at the tomb that Yeshua was put in as a type of well? Could it be like that when the stone was rolled away, it was too heavy? I mean, when the disciples went to the tomb, or when Mary, and was it Mary and Martha, who went to Mary and I'm okay. Here's the idea. Let's go back and look at this. Let's go over to John. Like, who's gonna move this tomb? I'm looking over in Luke chapter uh, 23, 55. Now the women who came with him out of Galilee followed after and saw the tomb and how his body was laid, and they returned and prepared spices. And the Sabbath in the cave for 24. But on the first day of the week, they came to the tomb bringing spices which they had prepared, and they found that the stone was rolled away. And when they entered, they did not find the body of Adonai Yeshua. Okay, so they're like, okay, wait a minute, let's look at another. This would probably be a really good study in and of itself in terms of this. When Yeshua, when the stones rolled away, Yeshua comes out of the grave, and we would, what parallels do we have here when we're pulling it together with this story about Jacob? Okay, now I'm sidetracked. Okay, and okay, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to the grave. All right, and that's in Matthew 28:8, and because when we have Yeshua going forth, don't we have? It talks about Yeshua talked about it. It was at the water pouring ceremony during uh, during Sukkot, and Yeshua gets up on the last day, and he says, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me." And And he says, "And out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water." We get this picture when Yeshua comes out of the grave. What are the living what is this what are the living waters that flow out of our belly? Isn't that the anointing and the power of the Holy Spirit that's supposed to flow out of our bellies, or does it flow out from our inner being? Isn't it that it that it is for everyone because Yeshua in his death, burial, and resurrection was to bring forth that resurrection life for each one of us. Isn't it that what we're supposed to experience? All right, I want to go over to the book of Ephesians, if you will, because I think Paul has given us that picture when he's writing this letter to the Ephesians in Ephesians chapter 1, and he's making this prayer. He makes it. He says, "This is my prayer for you." He says, "For this reason," just Ephesians chapter 1 verse 15. "For this reason, I too, having heard of the faith uh, of Adonai Yeshua, which exists among you and your love for all the saints, do not cease giving thanks for you while making mention of you in my prayers, that Yah of our Adonai Yeshua, Messiah, the Father of glory, may give you a spirit of wisdom and of revelation in the knowledge of him. And I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened so that you may know what is the hope of his calling, what are the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints, and what is the surpassing greatness of his power towards us who believe. I mean, there it is right there. And what is the surpassing greatness of his power towards us who believe? These are in accordance with the working of the strength of his might, which he brought about in Messiah when he raised him from the dead and he seated him at the right hand in the heavenly place, in the heavenly places, far above all rule and authority and power and dominion and every name that is named, not only in this age, but also in the age to come. And he put all things in subjection under his feet and gave him as head over all things to the assembly, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills all and all. And here we have this picture of what? This resurrection power when Yeshua is raised from the dead, the stone was rolled away, and this is what came out. It's Yeshua in the fullness of power. When we receive Yeshua, it's not just a fact of a conversion of a heart. Now I believe, and I didn't believe before, and now I have this idea of who Messiah is. It is about a a a wellspring of water, shall we say, is an idiom, a wellspring of an anointing of power that shifts and changes our entire atmosphere that we're in and out of our body. And think about, so here we have this illusion of these three flocks. We have an illusion of a well that is covered by a stone, saying, wait, there's going to be something that's going to take place. And who is it that moves the stone? It's Jacob. A stone that apparently that the shepherds wait for everybody to gather before they move the stone, that maybe it's so heavy that it takes more than one. And here Jacob in chapter 29 is the one who moves it. In verse 7, he says, behold, it's still high day. It's not time for the livestock to be gathered. Water the sheep and go pasture them. In other words, yeah, what do you mean it's not time for the sheep to be gathered? Now, the idea is the fact that the sheep would be gathered together at night for their protection. And it's like, well, wait, you got pasture time still. Let's get these things, get the sheep watered and get them back out in the field again so they can eat. And they said, verse 8, but they said, we cannot until all the flocks are gathered, and they roll the stone from the mouth of the well, then we water the sheep. Well, I don't know who the they is, but apparently there's more than one moves the stone. And while he was speaking with him, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it came about when Jacob saw Rachel, verse 10 of chapter 29, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Jacob rolled the stone away. Well, I think that also would go back and tell us, if there was any question, who rolled away the stone? Yeshua rolled his own stone away from the grave. Really amazing. And then when we tie that into with what Paul is talking to us in this prayer to the Ephesians, for the Ephesians, those in Ephesus, that he's saying, wait a minute, look at this working of the strength of his might that's in you. I want you to know the surpassing greatness of his power towards us who believe. I want you to know this thing that don't. I think what Paul's telling us here is he's sharing from his heart is that your life, our lives, are not mundane. They're not to be mundane. They're not to be normal. We're supposed to be living in a realm that touches the natural and the spiritual at the same time. This whole journey that that we see Jacob on, it's touching two realms, and of course, it's being fought in two realms. But why are we any different than Jacob? Because I think part of the story of telling us is this what happened with Jacob is to remind us. If you look at Jacob's life, there's more spoken about Jacob's life than Abraham's life or Isaac's life or their lives together. There's more time devoted to the life of Jacob than than his father or his grandfather. Why is it? Because I think what Yahweh wants to tell us, he's speaking to us, is that our lives are much like Jacob. And yet Jacob's life tells us what connects us to the heavenly realm. I I know that many people would like to, and we've talked about this in the past. Many people like to continue to infer upon Jacob what Esau called Jacob, Jacob the deceiver. My brother deceived me. I I think that it is Esau. Why is it that Esau's thinking is why we are taught that Jacob is a deceiver? Why is it Esau, his enemy, his own brother, who is disparaged within the scripture, as even how in Malachi that Esau is who Yah hated and Jacob he loved, and yet we continue to carry Esau's attributes upon Jacob rather than the attributes of Jacob, that Jacob is an overcomer, that Jacob is more than a conqueror in this life. So uh, because because I think one of the things that when we consider the whole volume that's spoken about Jacob, is it maybe then it puts a little bit of doubt in what Yahweh in the character of Jacob, in order for us not to receive the full meaning of what Jacob's life and character is really speaking to us about, a lifestyle by which we've got to battle. And yet, one of the things that I also really see, even though it's not really spoken here, and maybe you could probably disagree with me, is that how much of Jacob, Jacob's life is is has a maybe uh, has a part of his character, an attribute of fear that he battles along the entire way. Uh, that which is an intimidation of everything that's in front of him. And yet we see, in spite of the intimidations of, when it started out, uh, when he's talking to his mother, it's like, supposed to go in there and I'm supposed to be as if I'm Esau and to get my father's blessing. There's a hint of there's a fear in that. And Rivka says, well, let that be on me. He finds that he makes this prayer, says, like, I got this journey ahead of me and it's really intimidating, but if you're going to be with me and you're going to feed me and you're going to clothe me along the way, then let's make it happen. This whole idea that it's of an uncertainty that's set before him. He's going to a place, to his mother's brother's house. He doesn't know how he's going to be received empty-handed. Is it and And yet, every step that he takes is that of courage and boldness, and that I have a plan and a purpose that's already been set before me, and I don't know how it's going to work out, but I know that I will return to the land with a bride. And shall we also say, prospered along the way. So maybe maybe there's something to the fact that he's able to see beyond his circumstances, that he's able to walk with confidence, that joyfully lift his one foot in front of the other, which was makes up that whole idea of the this process. The stone that's on the mouth of the well is large. The stone that's on the mouth of the well is intimidating. The stone that's on the mouth of it's that's perhaps even guarded until a particular time, so no one starts dipping into the well until everybody is gathered. You think about the guards that were set around the tomb. So, but also in Nassau, where the idea of to be able to lift up or and to ra'ah, to be able to look up, to rise up, to take that which seems to be a where the word another word connected to it is burden, to lift above the burden that he's carrying. He's carrying the burden of the full heritage of his families on his shoulders to bring forth seed to fulfill the promise that his descendants would be like the dust of the earth, and they're going to go out to the north and south and the east and the west. But it's the same thing that was given to Isaac and to Abraham. This burden is like on him. He's like, he doesn't even have a wife yet, and he meets Lavan, and Lavan starts to work treacherously with him, and yet he's able to overcome those things. There's another idea of Nasa that gives us a connection to the idea of a banner. When you go into the Paleo Hebrew of Nassau, it's right mouse here. In the Paleo Hebrew, Nassau, again, Nassau going back to when he went on his journey to lift, uh, to bear up, to carry, to take. It gives an idea of to lift up a banner. It's as if you're taking a banner like a flag and you're tying it to a cross pole and then lifting that cross pole up into the air. It's a designation of a tribe. It's a designation as an ensign, an insignia. It would carry, for example, the crest of a particular family, and saying, we're going forth in the name of this banner, in the name of this tribe. And so we see also this prophetic outlook that when we use the word Nasa, the idea of bearing a banner, bearing a standard, would another way be to say it, because it's a picture of a seed, uh, in the root of it. It's a noon, uh, sheen root, and the noon is the picture of a seed representing continuance, and the sheen is a picture of a thorn representing the eye of grabbing hold. So to continue to grab hold, as in a tribal flag that is hung from a horizontal pole and lifted up high so that it can be seen from a distance. That is full of implication here, is that a journey that Jacob is taking, because it's a representation of the tribes to come. That to build the ability to see that is set within his seed is a royal priesthood, is a mighty army, are multiple tribes. That which would be coming from his loins is what he sees beyond, not just to get to Haran, where he was going, but it was to get to a journey by which a nation would be built. Could he even possibly have seen along this journey? You got a lot of time to think, especially by yourself. What do you do when you're walking 600 miles? You don't even have a radio to listen to, nothing to plug into. I mean, what do you do for 600 miles? And you think, and what type of what is it that he could be seeing? He could be seeing his bride. He could be seeing his children that would be raised up and that would spring forth. He could be seeing uh, that a heritage that would be his because of the promise. I mean, how do you take care of a big family other than to be prosperous in everything that you set your hand to? I mean, the word of the Lord that spoke to him was so much more. And you think about when he set up that stone at Hamakom, when he set up that, which the representation that as the sages have said that there were 12 stones that he set up, one being a chief cornerstone, a chief stone, that he poured the oil on, is because he saw more from that vision there when he saw the angels ascending and descending. That word Nasa is also used in another verse, a couple other verses, and that is when he sees Jacob, or when Jacob sees Rachel. And it's not only that when Jacob saw Rachel, so that word saw, again, we've used that word so many different times and have reviewed it in so many different ways. Ra'ah. Ra'ah gives us an idea of the scene, to see that which is visible right in front of us, but it also gives us a picture of like when Moses went up on top of the mountain and he looked out over the land. He ra'ad the land. I mean, and he saw the land. He saw what the land would be and would become. It was something beyond what he could see in the natural, but he could see in the spiritual about the significance of the land. When he looked it up, as when Jacob looks up and he saw Rachel, he also be seeing something that is beyond that which is in the physical, but that which is beyond. It's prophetic, it is spiritual, it's more. It's also a fulfillment of partial fulfillment of the prophecy that was given to him as he sees Rachel, that which she was set apart for him. I would have to say before he was even born, that which had been spoken into his life by Rivka, by his parents, that there is a bride waiting for him, that bride that was set apart for him before he was ever born, that he would know her when he saw her. We always like to say love at first sight. I think what this definitely was love at first sight, but can we also say that he was able to see that which had been prophetically spoken into his life in so many different layers within his life that he had been prepared for, that on the day of his meeting her, he knew it was her. And there was without a doubt. So that the love was not just uh, a physically just saying, oh, enamored by her beauty, which she was beautiful according to the scriptures, but there was a depth of this. What was it that caused him to work 7 more years on his behalf? It was as if it was a few days, according to what the scripture said. Just a few days, because what he saw in her was more than just the physical beauty, that it didn't matter because he knew that she was part of this destiny. She was part of the fulfillment of a journey. Maybe that was when he saw her and he rolled the stone. Maybe there was some type of supernatural unction when he saw her. It's like, whoa, there she is. Okay. It's like, was he showing off? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But he was certainly motivated. And then it says, then after rolling the stone away, Yaakov, Jacob, kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. Well, when he lifted up his voice, that word lifted again is nasa. So now it speaks again of something that is being revealed to us as he's lifting up his voice. It says he lifted up his voice and wept. When one lifts up their voice, there could be a number of different reasons why one would lift up their voice. Uh, it could be a shout. It could be vocalizing. It could be putting words into the air, into play. There's a lot of different ideas that can be coming from this. It could be establishing that which he saw, but it says, and he wept. Now, the weeping could be out of grief or out of joy. I would have to say the latter, because when you look at that Hebrew word, it can mean both. It is not that he is bemoaning the fact that he met Rachel, but rather that in great joy, he is weeping because he's seeing there's a lot of emotion built up, but that emotion is also undergirded by what's been spoken into his life. Specifically, I want to say spoken into his life by his mother, because it seemed like that Isaac uh, um, loved Esau because he saw Esau as being his firstborn. There's that maybe Jacob learned so much about the family that was over there in Mesopotamia from his mother. I don't know. Putting all these pieces together, we're kind of it's like a jigsaw puzzle. We're trying to build a picture here. But nevertheless, he lifts up his voice as if the burden is being lifted off his shoulders when he sees her. As if this weight that he's been carrying, all of a sudden, it doesn't matter anymore because the bridegroom has now come face to face with his bride. So, this word is also used another time within this Torah portion as it starts to connect this prophetic vision from that set him on this journey, that encouraged him, that strengthened him, that gave him an unction, even really an anointing, and to that is it fulfilled at this point in time that he sees his bride, and yet no, because there's more to the story. Over in chapter 31, he's been working for 20 years. 20 years. Now keep in mind, he did work 7 years for Rachel, ended up being for Leah. But after the week spent with Leah, he marries Rachel, but has to fulfill 7 more years because of that marriage. And yet he's got to work another 6 years as he builds his wealth, the wealth of his family. And so in chapter 31, it's time for Jacob to leave. Uh, it's time for him to return to the land. How does this get started? Of course, in 31, verse 3, he gets a word from Yahweh. After there seems to be some issues that are piling up here. Jacob, it's in verse 31, verse 1. Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what belonged to our fathers, he's made all his wealth. Well, of course, that's a lie. That's not what Jacob did. Jacob's being blessed. And how does he, did he overhear them? Did he hear them through the tent walls and them talking? Did someone overhear the sons of Laban? These are the brothers of Rachel and Leah talking. Did maybe Rachel and Leah heard them talking? Maybe one of the servants heard them talking. They're passing on the word to Jacob. And nevertheless, Jacob gets the word of what the sons are saying. In other words, the sons are talking about, wait a minute, this isn't right. Jacob is prospering so much, and he did it off the back of our father. And as if there's another threat, as if Jacob is a threat. Or perhaps is that it becomes a threatening environment. And ultimately in verse 2, where Jacob saw Ra'ah, the attitude of Laban, and behold, it was not friendly toward him as formerly. The thought is that Laban, speaking through his sons, none of them are happy because Jacob is prospering so much. Even after Jacob had prospered Laban and the family so much that Laban was made a very rich man as a result of Jacob. Apparently, the dowry that Laban had inherited from Rivkah had been dwindled out because they're following other gods. They didn't have the blessing of Yah upon them. And here's Jacob, and all of a sudden, new blessing comes upon the family, and now they're blaming it on Jacob, saying that Jacob's prospering more than their father has been. But verse 3 is when you have to say, Jacob is unsettled now. This is not good. Family, the atmosphere is changing. There's not, things have been shifted in how they're looking at him. See the spiritual battle that's going on? Laban, it's almost like he is certainly like an anti-Messiah figure, or maybe it's almost like the manifestation of Hasatan to block the work, the blessing of Jacob, to try to keep him entrapped, to change his wages 10 times, to hold him back, and from fulfilling his purpose, in order to prevent him from going back to the land. To in fact, it appears that Laban would want Jacob not even to go. He could leave, but he would not be able to leave with his wives or his children or his own flocks. I mean, this is a conniving man, a very evil man. Laban is the one whose name means to make bricks. Then Yahweh said to Jacob, verse 3 of chapter 31, return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I'll be with you. So here's the word, another prophetic word. It's time to leave. And it's interesting, Linda. I wonder why Jacob waited so long to leave. Maybe to build up his own wealth. I think that's part of it. But I think it's also waiting for the word. He was waiting for the word of Yah to say it's time. How many? Sandy and I have talked about this in the past, where we've thought that when we found ourselves in certain circumstances, that we knew that we're supposed to have left a lot earlier than what we did, and yet we stayed longer than we were supposed to stay, and then the circumstances end up get worse and worse and worse, and they were like, why didn't we leave sooner? I wonder if that's kind of like the situation. Well, kind of like we're holding on. It's just not quite ready. But sometimes it's those circumstances have to get the way they're supposed to be before we're supposed to exit. We're supposed to depart. So, because it's then after this word, then Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to his flock in the field, and and then he says, "Look, your father's attitude is not friendly toward me as he was formerly, but the Elohim of my father has been with me." And and he says, "You know, I've served your father with all my strength, and your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. However, Elohim did not allow him to hurt me." And And then we see in verse 10, it says, "And it came about at the time when the flock were mating, that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the male goats which were mating were striped and speckled and mottled. Then the angel of Yahweh said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, Here I am, Himene, here I am. And he said, Lift up now your eyes and see that all the male goats which are mating are striped and speckled and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you." So now we come back in to this where Jacob sees it, has a dream. It's the angel of Yah, which I would say is Yeshua. Uh, you could interpret it in so many different ways, but a lot of times when we see the angel of Yah within Scripture, it is actually it is Yeshua being manifested before them, kind of like Abraham and the three witnesses, and one of the witnesses would have been Yeshua, and he says, "Lift," Jacob says, "Here I am." It's the same type of thing over in Isaiah chapter 6 when Isaiah says, "Here I am, send me." Himene. And he said, "Lift up now your eyes. Lift up now your eyes." There's that word again, nasa. Lift up your eyes. In other words, I'm going to show you now. I want you to arise above, or shall we say, hey, look at the standard that's before you. Look at this banner. Yahweh, our banner. Yehovah Rohi, our banner. Uh, Lift up your eyes now and see, and see, and see. Now he's saying, he's looking before you. Look at what, basically he's saying, look at the prosperity that has been given you through the speckled and the striped. I want to show you something. Isn't it another type and shadow? Look, I want you to see Jacob, Messiah, who's been lifted up, and he has stripes on his back, and he's been beaten and he's been bruised, just like the stripes that are on the goats, the speckled and the the stripes that are on them that are part of your flock. I want you to see that which is your inheritance. I want you to see that which is when Yeshua said, "If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me." When um, you've heard me say this so many different times, when Yeshua said, "The thief has come to kill, steal, and destroy, but I came that you might have life and that more abundantly." And what is he seeing before him? He's seeing that, yeah, all around him, where the thief has been trying to come in and change his wages and trying to strip him of all of his wealth, and yet Jacob still prospers above. It's that Jacob has life and that more abundantly. Jacob is seeing, having this conversation with the angel of Yahweh. He's so so now we have the picture of the well with the stone and water that's in the well. We see the three flocks that were there at the well, the 3 days and 3 nights. That we see the picture of of it's almost like the ram that was caught in the thicket. Another picture of this male ram that had the crown of thorns, the horns caught in the thorns of the thicket. And yet, and another picture here that, "Lift up now your eyes and see." Isn't that what Yahweh told the angel of Yahweh told Abraham, lift up your eyes and see, and he saw the ram. Lift up your eyes, Jacob, and look again. What I showed your grandfather Abraham, I'm showing to you right now in this other shape, form, and fashion. But it's all the same thing. And it says, I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. He's not left him. Yahweh's not left him. He's been with him, and he's been by his side the entire time. And I am the Yah, I am the Elohim of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, where you made a vow to me. Now arise, leave this land, and return to the land of your birth. All right, now that same word is spoken twice. And Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, do we still have any portion or inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned by him as foreigners? For he has sold us and has also entirely consumed our purchase price. That tells you about Laban. What did Laban? Laban came to consume, to kill, steal, and destroy. He sold, so to speak, his daughters to Jacob. Right? That's what they're saying. Jacob paid the bridal price with hard labor because Laban, to make bricks, enslaved him there. He says, yeah, look, Jacob, you've really paid the price for everything. And even to the point that even our father doesn't even consider us his own any longer. That's how we feel. We feel alienated. We feel as orphans. And surely all the wealth which Elohim has taken away from our father belongs to us, and our children now then do whatever Elohim has said to you. So, wow. So family meeting, yeah, we agree. Let's go. Let's get away from the guy. He's not a good person. And we've seen all that he's done to you, because what he's done to you, he's done to us, and he's done to our family. And we need to separate ourselves and get away from there. Again, but it's that idea of to lift up. So Jacob he makes his way to find a bride. He had to Nassau. He had to lift up his foot. He had to journey there. He sees Rachel. He lifts up his voice. He's connecting that what we set our wherever we set our feet, whatever we set our hands to, it's connected by what we speak. You think about that. A lot of times we don't like to really consider this. Well, that's just word of faith type of people, because when people say blessing and cursings are in the power of the tongue, but we certainly do. The psychology has proved it, that we are speaking into our future today. What we're speaking into our children, what they're going to be like, how we speak to them today, by the very names that we name our children, are prophetically speaking into them of who they will be when they grow, when they're adults. And I think it's very important that we recognize that he lifted up his foot, he journeyed, he lifted up his voice, and he kissed Rachel. And now Yahweh is saying, I want you to lift up your eyes. Aren't these connected? Our feet, what we say, and our vision. It comes through a prophetic word. That word of Yahweh, when he speaks to our hearts. It's when our stony hearts are removed, and out of our belly flows rivers of living water. It's out of that by which comes the overflow of our mouth. I mean, let's just go back over to chapter 29. He he removed the stone from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brothers. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. The well was opened up and the water flowed, and Jacob's voice, out of the abundance of his heart, his mouth spoke. Whatever is loaded up in our heart, when that stone that's covering that well is removed, it's going to come out. I guess we could have a well of dirty water and we can have a well of fresh water. James talks about that. Let's look at that. Let's go over to James. I think it's James chapter 4. James chapter 3, verse 8. But no one can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil and full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Adonai and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the likeness of Elohim. From the same mouth come both blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be. Does a fountain send out from the same opening both fresh and bitter water? Can a fig tree, my brethren, produce olives, or a vine produce figs? Neither can salt water produce fresh. What was it that was being held back in Jacob? What was it that was being brought forth, and that was what came forth out of him? I think what came out of him was really the fullness, these prophecy being fulfilled in his life. That is being held back. So we say on a 600-mile journey, and now being released. But it's not just his mouth. It is also about him lifting up his eyes. Because what he lifted up his eyes, he's reminded about how the journey started. And then he's reminded about where he's to go. He's not supposed to lose the vision. He's not supposed to lose that which Yah had given him to fulfill. Now, I do want to say this, and because I think there's something else that is in here. Laban is such a scoundrel. He really is. Because Jacob, when he left stealthily. Verse 19, when Laban had gone to shear his flock, then Rachel stole the household idols that were her father's. And Jacob, deceived Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him that he was fleeing. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose, and he crossed the river, the Euphrates River, and set his face towards the hill of Gilead. All right, I don't like that translation. And that's over in chapter 31, and that was in verse 20. So go with me to chapter 31, verse 20. Let's take a little bit closer look. In the King James Version, it says, and Jacob stole away unawares to Laban, the Assyrian, in that he told him not that he fled. Now, I don't.
It says outwitted.
Outwitted him. So I like that better as opposed to deceive, because I don't like. See, I liked how my version translated a word earlier, and yet I don't like the way it translated this one. That's why we got to have our work tools. It's connected to the word is lev, which is the word for heart, but it speaks more so in terms of being unaware, and he stole away ganav. So, and which ganav is the word to thieve, and that's where my version comes up with the word to deceive, to carry away. But more so, it's really spoken about, because what we see in the action here is that Jacob stealthily had to leave. He picked up and left stealthily. We think, because it's not a matter that he deceived Laban that he left. I think it's more so that for the sake and protection of his family that they slipped away. And when Laban was doing what? He was shearing his sheep. He was off doing, he was occupied with what he's having to do with his own sheep, because it was that time of year. got to share the sheep. And so that's when he left. So I just don't like the idea that here Jacob, because it's trying to lend back to the Esau theory that Jacob is a deceiver. Jacob's not a deceiver. Jacob is looking out for his family, and because he knows what type of scoundrel that Laban is, that he's got to get away from Laban. He's got to get away from him because Laban is going to steal. He's going to kidnap his wife and his kids. Say, Jacob, you want to leave? Yeah, you're going to leave your flocks because you owe them to me. Your whole life is owed to me because I gave you the flocks to start out with. And in spite of what I told you, that you could have all the speckle and the stripes. Um, anyway, so
Wages.
as your wages, and yet he wanted to steal his wages. Isn't that what Pharaoh did? Isn't that what Pharaoh wanted to do? Is really uh, continue to kill, steal, and destroy Israel when they're in Egypt, enslaving them that much more. The builder, the one whose name means to make bricks. So there's one other point that I wanted to bring out, and it has to do that. Yeah. So Laban chases Jacob down, and they camp out, and they meet together, and they build this pile of stones, and they have a covenant meal, saying, "Look, I'm not going to go across this line and chase you anymore, Jacob, and Jacob, you're not going to come back and back across this line." The this the word Gilead is where they. This is in chapter 31, verse 46, where it says, "And Jacob said to the kinsmen, gather stones." So they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. So they had a covenant meal. Now Laban called it Yeger Sahadutha, but Jacob, called it Galid. And Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me this day." Therefore, it was named Galib and Mitzvah. For he said, "May Yahweh watch between you and me when we are absent one another, absent one from the other. If you mistreat my daughters," and he goes on, Yah is a witness. Okay. And so this word, Galid, it has a root word of Gal and Ev, Ed, Galid. Let's say it correctly. Galid. Gal having to do with to gather, and Ed as means witness, and that's where we get the two together. So Gal means something rolled, a heap of stones, dung, or spring of water. But it's also something as well is that it comes from the meaning of a heap of stones is often what's used to cover a dead body. In terms of, well, yeah, so we have a bunch of stones that are a memorial to a covenant meal of something that was enacted. But what else is also being shown here? Is it also showing us perhaps that something is dying here? Is it something that's being buried? Going back to the root word, and the root of Golgotha is used as the same root of Gol, which is a heap of stones. It is Golgotha is the place of the skulls, or a heap of skulls, we could probably say. And would it not give us another picture that something has to die? Is it something that it was on this journey with Jacob? That Jacob in this journey, like every one of us have to do when we go on a journey, because we're going to fulfill the purposes for which Yah has called us to do, is that it's a journey that is both in the physical, it's in the flesh, and it's also spiritual. And in the spirit, isn't it something that the more that we grow into the depths of the spiritual, the more that our flesh has to die? Is there something here that by this prophetic word that sends us forth, that maybe we're very much in the flesh when we get going, but along the journey we increase in our maturity, so we're more in tune with the things of the spirit, that at some point in time we have to recognize that our journey, though it's been in the flesh, it is about the destruction of our flesh. It's about the destroying of the flesh, those things that hold us in the grave, the things that hold us back, that keep us from experiencing the life of Yah, is that and eventually we're going to have to completely bury it, and it will be a witness that we're not going to go back across that line any longer. That we're going to heap up stones as if to say this dead body is not going to come out. It is now dead and buried, and the life that I now live is that is through Him who loved me. This is the life that I now live is the uh, that I live as a living sacrifice. That now my life is put on the altar, not buried in the stones, but the life that I now live because my life is now filled with His Spirit that's connected with a sense of walking in His Spirit and in His truth is now a life that is on top of the stones, is on top of as a witness of stones have been brought together as memorial. Say, now I am a living sacrifice by which I go forward in. Isn't that what we are supposed to live? Maybe this is some of the things that we're supposed to look at in this relationship that Jacob is showing us. That yes, it's about the bridegroom who gets his bride, who has a family that there's more than enough for his family. So much that he's able to bring so many herds with them. If you look at the number of the of of the herds that he sends to Esau. I mean, I'm thinking about how fast can you go with that many herds, that many goat, sheep, and donkeys, and and camels, and goats, and all that. How fast can you go? And then how do you keep them full? I mean, what time of year would this have to be in order that all of these will graze along the way, that there's more than enough food for them, and yet he's able to give hundreds to his brother Esau as a gift, and yet he still has a lot left over. I mean, I'm this he really prospered while he was gone, and yet here we have this journey. What is it in this journey that really, when we have here, Jacob is showing a lot of material wealth that he has, but this journey that we're on, it's not a is there material wealth? Yeah, I think so. That we're supposed to be fruitful within our lives so that we can have an inheritance to give to our children and our children's children. I think that's part of what we're supposed to give. And yet, the one who makes bricks does everything he can to siphon all that away from us. And yet, we are to build up wealth that is a heavenly wealth. When everything is put to the fire, it's supposed to remain as gold, silver, and precious stones because everything else is going to be burned away. But how much do we put into that? Our life, the significance of our life, the our life's worth is what we have materially. That we know that which is material is going to burn up. So what are we really building our life for? So anyway, those are some thoughts that I have for you today on this tour going on here. But thank you for commenting today. Like, share, subscribe, and also we've had some financial challenges at Life of Worship. We've had to take care of some big bills, and you all are a part of helping us meet the very financial needs that we have. I know very few that gather with us online are actually sow into this ministry. And I'm asking today that if you have the opportunity or the ability to sow into this ministry, I want to give you that opportunity and say, please go to our website at LOW or www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org. And I'm just making an appeal to you that if you have the ability to give a little extra this time, or if you've never given anything at all, to help this ministry, to help us take care of our financial needs, that you would take the time and go to our website and click the donate button and give something online today, even if it's $5 or $10. If you've got the ability to give more, $100 or $1,000 or whatever it might be, then I want you to pray about it and ask y'all what can I give and what can I do to be a blessing to this ministry today? We are only able to do what we can do financially. Actually, is one sense of it. We can only do what y'all empowers us to do, and part of empowering us to do is what comes about financially. The gospel is free, but there is a cost to ministry. And so we pray that you would take that time and to give accordingly. We've not had a gathering in 2 weeks as well. And those people that are here locally, if you would also remember to bring, if you would bring your tithes and offerings by our house, we'd certainly appreciate that. And you can slip it under a doormat. Let us know that you dropped it off. That would be wonderful. So, so please, we do say that we make that appeal to you today, and continue to pray and partner with us. Partnering financially is very important right now, as we have some financial needs to take care of, and then also to continue to pray, support. Thank you so much for praying for Pastor Sandi as she has battled this really horrific strain of this flu bug that's been going around. And we certainly thank you. Well, that's going to be it for now. We have something special for you planned at 3:00. So come back at 3 here at Life of Worship Ministries here on the YouTube channel. Share, like, subscribe, and until next time, shalom.